It's alive. Oh, it's alive.
Adventures in time and space, told in future tense.
All radio is dead.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Look, there comes one of them now.
Good evening, I'm Kyle.
I'm Brad.
And risen from the coffin, we are the Nosferatus. So, Brad, what are we doing tonight?
Well, tonight is a special episode. We're doing a double feature.
That's right.
The Giant Gila Monster and Earth versus the Spider, or otherwise known as just the Spider, which
That's correct. We're doing our Atomic Monster drive-in double feature.
That's right.
So we're going to cover two movies from the 50s. And the 50s were like a fun time. It was like the same as when more people our age would probably remember when computers all of a sudden hit the public consciousness, that there were these things that could calculate things really fast and do all your thinking for you and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, every single horror movie that popped up all had something to do with a computer or a robot gone wild. So in the 50s, though, I mean, you're talking just post World War II and the bombing.
The atomic age, baby.
The atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so nuclear power, atomic power is on everybody's mind. And so, of course, horror having to reflect that fear that's now in everybody's head, they start making atomic monster movies. Where, I mean, basically, in general, we'll get deeper into it, but in general, on the surface, it's all about the fear of atomic destruction. And so the horror movie writers and directors embodied this in these giant monsters. So Brad, when I say atomic monster, what's the first movie that pops into your head?
Godzilla.
Yeah, I think that's the first for everybody. And but Godzilla, which was produced, came out in 1954, produced by Toho. And it was not actually the first, although it did that was the one that really kind of set a standard, right?
Right.
Now, the Japanese, of course, they refer to their atomic monsters as kaiju, which literally just means strange beast. But the very first credited atomic monster film, if you follow us on Facebook, which I hope you do, it'd be a lot cooler if you did.
You did.
The very first considered atomic monster film was The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which came out just the year before Godzilla on June 13th, 1953. It was based on the Ray Bradbury short story, The Foghorn, which is basically just about a creature that attacks a lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
It used a fictional dinosaur called a Rhedosaurus, because basically before Jurassic Park, writers loved to just invent new dinosaurs that never ever existed before. Yeah, so giant monsters had been around before The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, because you had The Lost World in 1925, and you had King Kong, of course,
mm-hmm.
King of the monsters, as it were, in 1933. But The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was the first one that the origin was that it was mutated by atomic weapons that had been test fired in the ocean. So now The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, it had a great visual effects, sort of early for now, of course, you had King Kong, which used stop motion.
Mm-hmm.
But this was, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. This is Ray Harryhausen stop motion. So you're talking about, for the longest time, I mean, given you watch it now, it's totally like kooky and janky and weird.
Yep.
But a lot of that had to do with the frame rate that they had to use, and things like that. Like we found ways now. There are more recent uses of stop motion that look a lot cooler.
Would you say it was weird that Ray Harryhausen style was weird by 1987 or so?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because
by then, by that point, it was a little odd, a little weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
So right around the time that A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 came out.
Yeah, so something just fell. It just fell. Yeah, it was. Yeah, stop motion. They were still. The funny part was they were still using stop. I know what you're getting at.
What am I getting at, Kyle?
You're somehow trying to disparage the name of what I feel is the best Nightmare on Elm Street film of them all.
I'm simply trying to revisit maybe one of your arguments where I felt that whole scene where Freddy came back as the skeleton and was fighting Nancy's dad in the junkyard, that was a little ridiculous. And your argument was, hey man, that was Ray Harryhausen. That's, and you just admitted that looked absolutely ridiculous.
It's a little Sinbad the Sailor. I'll admit, right? But I mean, Ray Harryhausen did set up for a lot of, he was one of those integral people that set up for a lot of the advancements then to come in visual effects. Just the idea of using that stop motion technique. But now, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms preceded the movie Them, which was about giant ants, and Godzilla, both of which came out the next year. Them was the first big bug movie. The premise being that atomic weapons and nuclear radiation caused ants to grow to gargantuan. That was the funny thing about the atomic horror movie, was the nuclear energy, the radioactive isotopes were supposed to do one of two things. Either they made you grow giant to giant size, or they made you get really small. The only other thing that you could do is just mutate. There were a lot of mutants. A lot of breaking down of DNA. But you had, then there was a slew then during the 50s of atomic monster movies that came out all through the 50s. You got Tarantula, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, The Black Scorpion, It Came from Beneath the Sea. A lot of attack movies. Like,
I just watched one today, Kyle, called Attack of the Crab Monsters.
Attack of the Crab Monsters, 1957.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And also Attack of the Giant Leeches, because apparently atomic energy makes leeches grow massive. There was a movie with giant locusts called The Beginning of the End. And there was one of the films was popular enough that it actually got a sequel. It was one of the only sequels that I found. It was a mini franchise, because there was in 57 they made The Amazing Colossal Man, which is basically just where some poor guy gets irradiated and he grows giant, grows huge, and it kind of like makes him go nuts. And of course, by the end of that movie, they're supposed to have like killed him, like they're forced to like kill the guy. But then in the next year, 1958, he comes back and his face is all mangled, part of his skull showing, and that's War of the Colossal Beast. Yeah, crazy stuff. Just a big giant bald guy, just strutting around in like loincloths. I think if I remember right, I have to watch him again, but I think he grabs like a circus tent or something in one of them to like wrap around his junk.
Okay.
That's a big top.
Ew.
But yeah, so the first film we're going to watch here at the old Nosferatu's Drive-In is going to be The Giant Gila Monster.
Ooh, I'm glad you said that because that's the movie I have queued up.
That's kind of where I was going with it. So yeah, the Giant Gila Monster. We're going to go ahead and get started. If it's your first time listening to the podcast, we're also adding video to this one. This is our first video taped version of the podcast. And yeah, so we're going to start the movie so we can kind of
feel
watch
underdressed.
Hey,
I should have wore my tuxedo T-shirt.
There you go. Yeah, it's a big night, big
Yeah,
big
it is
big
It
gala.
is a big night. That's right.
The Giant Gila Monster premiered in 1959, directed by Ray Kellogg. Now, Ray Kellogg had also directed The Killer Shrews, and he directed The Green Berets with John Wayne. Produced by Ken Curtis, who is also the producer on The Killer Shrews. Now, this has kind of a fun... now, I'm watching the colorized version of it. We already watched the black and white once before.
Right. I'm actually watching the colorized version myself because it's on Tubi.
Yeah, it's on Tubi. You can find it. I have it up on the Roku channel.
Oh, okay.
And the Giant Gila Monster is fun for a couple reasons. I mean, number one, it's a great atomic monster movie. But also, it has like this kind of, I don't know, how would you describe the teenagers in the movie? Like what?
Old.
Like, yes, the teenagers are a little on the old side. Specifically,
I had to look it up because for Earth versus the Spider as well, there's a character in that movie that's clearly like 50 years old. And he's playing a teenager, and he looks older than the teachers. Yeah. And in this one, the main character in Giant Gila Monster, the main character Chase, I looked it up. He was 30 years old.
Right.
When this movie was made, the actor was 30.
Yeah, the main character Chase is played by an actor by the name of Don Sullivan. And Don Sullivan did a lot of movies in the 50s. He was and it was a lot of this kind of drive-in or even early, what would be kind of, because the Grindhouse era was considered more like kind of the late 60s into the 70s. But this was kind of like an early Grindhouse type where it's focusing on teenagers. But specifically, these teenagers are like, if you had to like categorize them, what kind of other than old, what kind of teenagers are they?
Kind of teenagers. I'm not sure really what you mean by that. They're goody, wholesome teenagers who like to drive cars and
that's the thing. Not this group. These are hot rodders.
No, but they're the most polite gang of teenagers that you'll ever come across. So this is like the gangs of these kind of 50s movies, right? They're like they wear leather jackets and they drive fast cars, but they're like very polite to their seniors and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, these guys, these hot rodders, they go out on the back roads, the dirt roads, and they have drag races, and they soup up their cars, and they take them out and they test them on these back roads. And, there's a lot of, they allude to the fact that there's accidents that happen because they drive them into trees and ditches and stuff because they lose control. But the whole idea is that Don Sullivan's character, Chase, he keeps them in line. He's the leader who is like, a good guy. He's a nice guy, and so he works with the sheriff to keep those guys in check and make sure they're not doing anything too dangerous.
He's also a guy who tucks in his sweatshirt.
True. Yep, he definitely does that.
Kyle, who tucks in their sweatshirt? Was that a thing in the 50s?
Well, I mean, probably if they're doing it in the movie, I would think so. I would think that, they probably tuck him in, especially if I would say if you're like a mechanic, like he is. One
Well,
of these guys
he's a
that's like,
mechanic in the movie, so what? So he doesn't get it caught on
maybe.
the underside of the car or something?
Yeah, maybe if he's like trying to run the engine, he doesn't want to get it caught in the fan belt or something like that.
All right. I guess so.
I mean,
I guess
that's just
so.
off the top of my head. I have no idea.
All right.
Now, Don Sullivan, before we get on to the rest of the cast, Don Sullivan, interesting little factoid I found out, he had a chemistry degree from the University of Idaho. And after he got out of acting, he became a top creative cosmetic chemist in the hair industry. So, I don't know. There you go.
Huh.
And he did have a
Okay.
daughter. He did have a daughter that ended up getting into acting, Lucia Sullivan. She was on Criminal Minds and a few other shows. You got like a fun little cast here. You got Lisa Simone plays Chase's girlfriend Lisa. She was a 1957 Miss Universe contestant. You got and there's not like super recognizable probably to like our generation, but at the time they were like known character actors. Fred Graham is Sheriff Jeff.
Sheriff Jeff, which is it's a great character name, Sheriff Jeff.
Sheriff Jeff, who, he and Chase, they get along, and Chase is always, helping him out. That's the funny part, is this turns into a buddy cop movie.
It does. It really does.
It should have been called The Adventures of Chase and Sheriff Jeff.
And one thing that bothers me about Sheriff Jeff, what's the one thing that really bothers me about Sheriff Jeff, Kyle?
I think it has something to do with his badge, doesn't it, Brad?
His pocket, he's got a double-breasted shirt on, and the pocket, the top flap of one pocket is covering half of his badge. It just bothers me. It's very sloppy.
Now, I have a theory about
okay. Oh, okay.
My theory about that badge is that the production could only afford one of those like chromed plastic clip-ons, and so it's clipped onto the lip of the pocket because it didn't have a pin on it.
Right.
So instead of going out and finding one with a pin, they just slid the clip on, and then the flap had to hang over top of the badge.
You might be right.
So you got there's also Old Man Harris. Old Man Harris is like almost like the lovable mascot of the Hot Rod Gang. He's played by a guy named Suge.
Yeah.
Before there was
he
Suge
looks
Knight,
like a Suge.
Before there was Suge Knight, there was Suge Fisher. And he was in a bunch of stuff, a bunch of television.
Very similar, folks.
And then you got the crusty old man. They have to have having the atomic in these movies. You have to understand having the atomic monster, whatever it is, isn't enough. You have to have kind of a little bit of a civilian villain, somebody who's kind of gumming up the works. It can't be just a straightforward, hey, we got a problem with a monster. There's got to be somebody kind of gumming things up for the heroes. And that is Mr. Wheeler, played by an actor named Bob Thompson, who basically he might as well have been Ebenezer Scrooge in a cardigan.
Right.
These darn kids and their lollygagging and the shenanigans.
Yep.
What are you going to do about it there, Sheriff?
Sheriff? Yep. Sheriff Jeff.
Sheriff Jeff, why do you wear your badge like that, Sheriff Jeff? Don't you have any respect for yourself? These kids walk all over you, Sheriff Jeff. Oh my God, it's a atomic fucking monster. Sheriff Jeff, are you going to do something about that monster? These hot rodders, they summoned a monster from the hoary depths. So this, the movie though was produced by a Dallas drive-in theater chain owner named Gordon McClendon. And he specifically, so we talked about Ray Kellogg and Ken Curtis made the movie, and they also made The Killer Shrews. This was the first. Giant Gila Monster and The Killer Shrews were the first two movies that were made together to be a double feature. So it used to be there was like a whole studio system, which I did a bunch of research that we don't really need, but there was a Supreme Court case where the Department of Justice took Paramount Pictures to court. And the Department of Justice was saying that the way the studios at the time, prior to these movies, were distributing their films violated antitrust law. Because the studios would go ahead and buy various theaters in different markets, and then they would force these theaters to either only run their movies, or if they were dealing with an independent theater, they would say, okay, well, you want the new big film coming out, right? Well, if you want that, you need to buy these other 5 stinkers.
Yeah.
And it was a way for them to like offload these movies and make money on movies that otherwise people didn't really want to see.
Right.
Or they would package, there was a thing called, what was it called? There was a thing called, that was blind buying, and then there was block booking. Block booking and blind buying kind of went hand in hand. Block booking was where they said, okay, we're going to give you a double feature. And that second movie is going to be, no matter what, it's going to be a B movie. And so it forced the theater owners were like losing money on the deal, because they would pay for the movies, but then either nobody wanted to come because, well, why do I want to see that second movie?
Right.
Or they'd get up and leave, and then they would lose money on concessions. And so the Department of Justice, when they heard what was going on, they took them to court and they won. And there was the Paramount decree. And they said, you can't do that anymore. You got to give them the option to buy other films. Or if you're going to say, hey, you need to buy this movie and one other movie from us, the other movie needs to be like a movie that was big and is now like a re-release. Something that's still going to draw people. They said you can no longer put a big new feature film with a stinker. And so then to get around that, a lot of filmmakers, a lot of studios started producing. Well, they said, well, okay, well, you know what? That's fine. We still want to package some movies, though. So how about, instead of making you pay for the big movie and a stinker, or a big movie and a re-release, how about we make kind of a couple of B movies that maybe would work good for like kids at a matinee, and we'll sell them to you and you can show them together, but they're like they're 2 movies of the same standard. So Giant Gila Monster and Attack of the Killer Shrews was made to get around the Paramount decree, so they could sell them to theaters and say, well, they're 2 monster flicks, like kids are going to like them, but and they're cheap. Yeah. And so theaters would buy them up. They'd say, oh yeah, giant monsters, sure, and they ended up like movies that otherwise would not be anything that people would kind of just overlook, ended up becoming bigger because they were packaging those movies together. So it was the people who like monster movies and horror movies and all that kind of stuff would come to the theaters specifically to see a double feature of 2 movies that were like the same thing. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy stuff that horror movies the Supreme Court, they affect everything. But yeah, so anyway, let's get into the movie. So this movie, like I said, it's built to appeal to a young audience. So when you see the movie, Brad, what kind of things do you see are going to appeal to the kids?
Well, at one point they bring in a DJ, right, to like the party, and he's gonna play the newest record for all the kids, you know what I mean, to dance to. And it turned out to be Chase was the singer, but stuff like that, like the radio DJ who used to be really, really popular.
But yeah, you're talking about a time period when radio DJs were kings.
Right.
I mean, this is the time period when you get the Big Bopper, who went from being a radio DJ who wrote a song of his own, recorded a song of his own, and then he becomes a big record star
Yep.
just on that one song,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So yeah, radio DJs to like, especially the teenagers of this time period, are freaking unbelievable celebrities.
Right. And then the cars too. The the fact that they're into the cars and drag racing and all that stuff. My, dad used to tell me stories and stuff like that of him growing up. I'm sure your dad did the same thing. They souped up their cars and went drag racing. What are you drinking? What do you got there?
I got a little liquid IV here. I'm mixing up my liquid IV.
The way you're shaking it is throwing me off.
Yeah, the hot rod culture.
Yeah.
Of the 50s,
Right.
Which eventually then come like the 60s gets replaced by what? Pop quiz.
What? Counterculture?
Motorcycle culture.
No.
So like
motorcycle in the 60s, motorcycle culture was in the 50s.
No, late 60s. Late 60s it got started.
You mean like you mean like the motorcycle clubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, when did the clubs start?
Yeah, okay, maybe early 60s.
You might add some. You might add a few.
But like movie, we referred to a movie called The Wild One in one of our episodes previously with Marlon Brando. That was in the 50s. That was
true.
Motorcycle culture was prevalent in the 50s.
Yeah, you might be right because I think there, like I said, I think there were some that after post Korean War, there were some guys that started to form, especially clubs. But this was like, so
they all had the leather jackets and,
Yeah. But they were considered like the real, like in this time period, like a motorcycle guy might as well have been like, oh, that's a criminal. that guy's a criminal. He rides a motorcycle.
Mm.
But yeah, you got the hot rods, you got the little sock hop, with the DJ. All this kind of stuff. The sock hop.
God. Yep.
And but again, the most humorous part of the movie, other than this giant Gila monster, which isn't even a Gila monster, that the lizard in this thing is, where is it? It's actually a Mexican beaded lizard.
Okay. And it's just footage. So this was like something I wanted to bring up because in both Earth versus the Spider and the giant Gila monster, the monsters are just footage of the lizard or the spider, like a tarantula. And it's just footage of them walking around. Right, and it's just everybody else is like reacting like, and oh my God, look over there. And it's just footage of a spider walking.
Now, I will say,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I will say, at least in Giant Gila Monster, it's
there's a claw at one point. There's someone made a claw,
and it's a Mexican beaded lizard crawling over miniatures.
Yep.
Like there's miniature trees and shrubs and stuff. Whereas I think in Earth versus the Spider, most of that is just like almost, I don't know if it was
superimposed onto the film or something.
Yeah, I don't know if it was actual rotoscoping, like what we, or if it was like an earlier kind of version of that. But yeah, you can tell it's like specially cut in to the shot, so that you'll always have kind of two sides of the frame.
Right.
There's your heroes over here on this side of the frame in miniature, and then over on the other side of the frame is this giant crawling spider. And you can totally tell they are not in the same place at the same time.
No, not at all.
I mean, Peter Jackson, eat your heart out when, for like forced perspective, like Lord of the Rings style. But the Gila monster, at least he's crawling through actual like little branches and things.
But like in Attack of the Crab Monsters, someone made a crab monster. So I like that better because I'd rather watch, a made monster than just footage of, an animal walking around. You know what I mean? Like instead of like just watching footage of like a wolf walking around. I want somebody to make like a wolf, like a werewolf kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's scarier, or it's better.
Yeah. Well, and to give you kind of a bit of a clue, so when we get to Earth versus the Spider, so Earth versus the Spider was directed by a fellow by the name of Bert I. Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Bert I. Gordon, for any old head fans of Mystery Science Theater 3000, you might know like their feelings on Bert I. Gordon. Like like those guys, like Bert I. Gordon is like, he made like it was like cookie cutter, quickie, get the movie. And the funny part is he made The Amazing Colossal Man and War of the Colossal Beast, but he also made The Beginning of the End. And in The Beginning of the End, that is about these, radioactive mutated giant locusts attacking a major city. And unlike Earth versus the Spider or even The Amazing Colossal Man, The Beginning of the End is literally just little like locusts and or grasshoppers. I don't know that you can really tell which they are supposed. I think they're probably just grasshoppers, and they're being thrown from off camera at a at a flat 2-dimensional picture of a skyscraper.
Oh my God.
And they're supposed to look like they're crawling
Yeah.
up a skyscraper, but every once in a while, one of their little like claw hands hits like sky and still stops.
Right.
And that was his big special effects in that one.
That's great.
So yeah, I mean, it is obviously better when they actually go to the length of trying to create something. Like you said, at least in Giant Gila Monster, there's like the claw that comes in like to kill. There's like a traveling salesman or something that his car's like, he's wrecked his car by accident on one of these back dirt roads. But you can tell it's like some dude's like hand inside of a gloved like claw thing just coming at the camera, just
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's always nicer when you see it. Like at least in Earth versus the Spider, they made like a leg. You see it, there's like a fake spider leg that comes in.
Right. Yep.
And I always laugh whenever there's the giant like spider films, or whatever, because like Tarantula at least like said, hey, it's a tarantula.
Right.
But meanwhile, you had like 20 other films that came out during this time period and even later, even into the 70s, where it was supposed to be just some giant spider, but it was definitely still just a tarantula crawling around on a miniature. For some reason, tarantulas are always the bad guys.
Yeah. Make the monster. Just make the monster. No matter how bad it looks, it's going to be better than just footage of the actual animal walking around. Give it a shot.
When we watched this the first time, Brad, there's a part in this with Don. Now, Don Sullivan is a magnetic actor. He's a little bit, Wonder Bread, Americana type good guy. Yeah. He's a bit of even though he's supposed to be the leader of this hot rod gang, he's a bit of a square.
Yep.
And they decide at one point, like why does the DJ come into play? Why does the DJ show up to their sock hop?
Well, because he runs off the road. He saw the giant Gila monster cross the road, and he drove off the road. But he's clearly drunk.
Right.
So Chase has a tow truck, he's a mechanic and he has a tow truck, and he rescues him, he pulls him out of the ditch. And so to kind of pay him back, he shows up at the party, at the sock hop.
Well, it's also because while he's sobering up, he hears Chase in the other room in the garage, because Chase brings him back to the garage and let him sleep
Oh
it off
yeah,
on the
that's
cot.
right. Yeah, that's right.
And he hears Chase singing
Yeah,
while he works on the car,
because Chase has this beautiful voice.
like an angel. And it's one of these weird things. I looked it up, and Don Sullivan, I thought when we watched this movie the first time, I thought this was one of these things that they used to do where, like, oh, this actor also wants to
To
get
promote
into...
his singing career kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But apparently that was not the case. Don Sullivan did not have any kind of a music career
Okay.
at all. And so he and apparently he also wrote the song. He wrote the song himself. Laugh, Children Laugh. Which I have to imagine, because the song was written for the film and only is used in the film. And this film, I believe, is public domain. So I'm going to verify it, but this would be where I'm going to possibly play the clip of Laugh, Children Laugh. But he, so it turns out there was no ulterior motive. They just decided for some, and it's the weirdest thing ever. And the only thing I can think, the only reason that's in the film is because they're like, you know what the kids love? The kids love cars. They love DJs. They love the radio. They love having sock hops. And you know what they also love? They love a handsome guy that can carry a tune
with the guitar.
So we're gonna have Don. We're gonna have Don sing this song. It's gonna be a little ditty, and they're gonna love it. And the kids are gonna watch the movie, and they're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I love Don Sullivan. He's so handsome, and he sings, and he's amazing." And it's gonna be the biggest movie in the world. Bang, the world.
Okay, wow.
But it's just one of those unbelievable things that, like, and all of these movies kind of have a tendency to go down this path of having these kind of like weird little, like, tangential, like the characters, they have the character of the old man that we talked about that Shug plays.
Yeah.
Old Man Harris. And it's sort of like, why is he even there?
Comic relief.
It's got to be. Oh, and if anybody hears any noise, there is a giant thunderstorm here right now. So if anybody hears rain hitting the roof and everything else, that's what's going on.
Yeah, we have
Thunder,
pretty bad winds.
lightning.
Yeah. So we talk about what qualifies as horror. It's just the monster, right?
And yeah. When it comes to atomic monster films, that is pretty much the only they ride a pretty fine line where you think like, oh, obviously this could be science fiction, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure.
And I mean, like the Rocky Horror Picture Show song, science fiction double feature, But yeah, so they ride that line of like, okay, it's atomic energy, it's nuclear, radiation that is causing these monsters to mutate and grow large. I think the horror really comes in, and the reason I feel like a lot of people would kind of side with, I think we're on the same page. Like, we consider this horror.
I think it's so funny because I think on one side you go, it's obviously horror. It's obviously horror. It's a monster movie. It's monster movies. This was horror in the 50s, right? We talked about it all the time. It's not until 1960. But first you had the Universal monsters, and then you had kind of the monster movies of the 50s, and then you got into Psycho, and movies like that. So this was kind of the face. Godzilla, King Kong, these kind of movies were the face of horror in the 50s. So yes, however, it's a whole different ballgame from Saw or Terrifier or Friday the 13th or, Halloween. Right? It's a whole different kind of horror.
Right. And so much of what they were doing was still also trying to get around the Hays Code. So you couldn't show a lot of gruesomeness. You couldn't show a lot of gore. You couldn't show. I remember when you and I watched Earth versus the Spider, the second movie in our double feature. We were surprised when there's that opening scene where he gets like splattered with blood, or the car, or the hood of the car, or something.
Right in the beginning, right in the beginning of the movie, yeah.
Right in the beginning of the movie, we're like, whoa. Yeah, we couldn't believe that they showed, now given it looks like chocolate syrup in black and white, but we couldn't believe they showed that in a 50s era monster movie.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was awesome. Right from there, we were like, holy shit, what is going on in this movie?
In. Yeah.
And I think really what it comes down to, because yes, we feel that we would be in agreement that this is a horror movie. In the 50s, this is what they considered a horror movie, even though technically it might be more akin to a science fiction film. It's a horror movie that really more has science fiction elements, like we talk about with Predator. And a big part of that, I think, is because of the underlying context of what it's supposed to represent. Because what it's playing on is the fear of what?
Nuclear war.
Nuclear war. We are in, and when this movie is made, we are in the...
We're in the nuclear age.
Well, truly, from you're talking early 50s. I think, and I can't. I'm not a cultural scholar or anything. I studied theater, but I think there's that kind of almost, to use a bit of a too flippant term, there's a honeymoon period that happens just post World War II, where yes, nuclear weapons have been used. We're the people who use them, but nobody really understands what that means yet. And it's not until a few years go by and people really start to hear and understand or informed as to what exactly happened when those bombs hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because I know I've seen in documentaries where they talk about how early on there were people who were like, okay, we bombed them, big deal. It was a bomb.
Mm-hmm. And
they don't understand exactly what that bomb did, what it was made from, and they had really the scientists themselves had really just come to an understanding of what the radiation would do. Like during the testing, during the experimentation, they were learning what the effects of these, of what the radioactive isotopes and ionizing radiation, what that does to tissues and to a human body. And there's the very famous story about one of the scientists himself, working, testing radioactive yield, and then there's an accident and he gets like completely irradiated and then has this slow, agonizing death where they have to keep him alive because they have to study what the radiation is doing to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so the scientists only kind of barely understand what that radiation is going to do. And there were even some people from things that when Oppenheimer came out, they started talking. You saw a few more like documentary shows and things about that time period. And they were saying how there were even members of the government, including the president, including Truman, who had no idea. Like they thought, oh yeah, we're going to drop it. And the lab coats say there's radiation. But that's going to go away. That's like they didn't have any understanding about fallout, any of that stuff. So it takes a few years, and then all of a sudden everybody starts really, like the American public starts really learning about what exactly those bombs did. And the images are coming out. The little girl running out of the city with all of her clothes burned off, and the horror of it hits. And then, of course, who gets the bombs?
The Russians.
The Russians develop their own. And now all of a sudden we're sitting here thinking, we're also in that kind of very privileged, safe area of like, well, we're the only ones that have them. So yeah, that's horrible and that sucks. But we're not going to use them again. Hopefully we'll never have to do any of this ever again. And everything will be fine. And then all of a sudden the Russians are like, oh yeah, but we have them. And then all of a sudden all the Americans went, oh shit.
Make more.
And so now you get to this state of, and I mean, it's not underselling it to say constant, deep, for some people, debilitating fear. If back then you had soldiers that come out of combat and, there's the classic Carlin bit about shell shock and then it becomes PTSD. Americans in general were suffering from a form of PTSD just from the concept that someone else other than us has these weapons and could possibly use them against us. And then you may see a picture of a little American girl running out of New York City with all of her clothes burned off.
Yeah. The Giant Gila Monster is a heavy movie, man. It's a heavy, heavy movie.
Well, but that's the fear that is being played on.
No, yeah, no, it is. Yep, for sure.
And because to even get close to the level of destruction that a nuclear weapon does, like the mind of the Hollywood writer is like, well, it would have to be like a giant monster that just comes and literally knocks all the buildings over, and especially then, but of course for the Japanese, they made it very clear that that's what Godzilla was about. There was,
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. There was no mistaking, that Godzilla was the manifestation of the collective trauma of the Japanese. And they needed some way to express it. Some way to put it out there, and to also allow, there's like the catharsis that they have to go through. So by seeing this nuclear powered creature wreaking havoc and destroying cities, there's a catharsis there for them, because then it's all that stuff of, but they're seeing heroes. They're seeing people on the screen who are persevering and dealing with what's going on and making attempts to overcome and survive. And then eventually, that also morphs into Godzilla is our friend. That at some point we can, but really what it is at some point we can stop being afraid of that big destructive thing. At some point we have to get past it and realize that there's more to life. Whereas that was their experience. For us, even though we didn't go through it, it's that ever-pervading fear that we might go through it. And that's where you get giant Gila monsters, giant spiders, giant locusts, giant
crabs,
giant crabs, and yeah, it is, it when you really think about it, it is deep shit. But the comedy comes from the fact that they're dealing with this like deep, hardcore trauma. And meanwhile, it's about, gee, gosh, guys, let's go get in our hot rods and track down this giant Gila monster.
Right.
Come on, Sheriff Jeff.
Someone spotted him down at the old farm.
And there's all these like, especially with giant Gila monster, there's all these weird attempts to make I feel like I just feel like Ray Kellogg and Ken Curtis, as much as they're making this and Killer Shrews to be this cheap double feature that they can easily sell to theater owners who will put it up as a matinee. Kids are going to come, teens are going to come, they're going to watch it, they're going to, eat up all the popcorn and drink all the sodas, and they're going to make a bunch of money. It's like in this one, Killer Shrews, not so much. Killer Shrews is a different creature. In this one, there's all these weird for your consideration moments. Like, do you see that?
Are you at one of those scenes right now? All right.
The little sister. Okay. All right. Okay. We're not laughing at the fact that she has a disability, because she has a disability. But that's not what we find funny.
Nope.
That's not funny.
That's not funny.
What is funny is that they use a child with a disability to, for some, I don't even know why, create this touching, heartfelt moment with the main character, Chase, and she gets her magic legs.
Kyle. Easy, fella.
Hey, if Tom Hanks can say magic legs and win an Oscar, I can say magic legs.
Okay.
She gets her magic legs. She gets leg braces. Chase's girlfriend does this amazing, sweet thing. She saves up money from her job, like as basically, I guess she's like a housekeeper, kind of nanny, something. She's French, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why she's French. I'm not sure what the deal, like why the choice was made to make her French.
Why not? Why can't she be French?
Yeah, but she's French.
Yeah.
And she saves up money to do this nice thing for her boyfriend, Chase, for his sister, and she purchases special braces for her so that she doesn't have to be carried around or be in a wheelchair anymore. She can learn to walk with the leg braces. The one reason I will say that the leg brace scene becomes important is because later on in the film, they do have that moment of, we've shown you the sweet scene where the very sweet girlfriend gets the brace, saves up all her pennies and gets the leg braces for the sister. And then Chase is like, she's showing her older brother who she adores. Look at me, Chase. I can walk, and I'm practicing. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're so sweet and so cute. And he sings his weird children laugh song to her, which is part of why the scene is humorous, because for no reason whatsoever, they again plug this non-existent song that is not going to come out on anyone's radio stations. And it's really, as much as it is a for your consideration moment where, like, you can tell, like, they're telling Don Sullivan, dude, like, this is, you got to, like, chew that up.
Maybe they really thought that, like, the record companies were going to come, like, calling. You know what I mean? Oh, we want your boy. We want your boy, Don Sullivan.
Sylvia, get me Ray Kellogg on the phone. I got to talk to him about this hot new song that his boy Don Sullivan's singing in this movie. Now, Sylvia, toot sweet.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, maybe they thought it was going to turn into something.
I have to imagine that's it. Yeah.
But my feeling is it really ends up only setting up a later scene where they now have to get away from the giant Gila monster. And so now we've set up this wonderful, beautiful, sweet scene. You feel so good. It's like kind of halfway through the movie. You feel so great, oh wow, what a sweet moment. That's so cool. Well, now, like, by the end of the movie, now we're going to make this little girl with leg braces run from a monster. We're going to make her try to escape a monster using her new magic legs. And it feels a little that, like, if they were trying to set up a Oscar moment, it feels like they really cheapened it by using her as then the implement to slow down the heroes.
Yeah.
Like now we have to move slower because we're waiting for Chase's sister to keep up while she's trying to run on these leg braces. So again, it's not it's not her disability that is funny. It's the fact that they thought for any reason that this whole side thing should exist in this film.
Right.
Because like I would not watch. Okay, so given this is not Terrifier, right? We established that.
Yeah.
But for its time period, it's kind of meant to be sort of like Terrifier. Like it's meant to be a scary movie.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yep.
So you would not expect to see a scene in Terrifier where, someone with like a quadriplegic, is expected to like use their like motorized wheelchair to escape Art the Clown, right? Like you wouldn't expect them to go there. Even in Terrifier.
Friday the 13th Part 2, there's a teenager in a wheelchair.
That is true. And I think they roll him down like a whole flight of stairs.
Oh,
right?
yeah. He gets a machete to the face, and then they he pushes him down the stairs.
Yeah, maybe.
And they show him going down the stairs too in the wheelchair.
Maybe it is just some weird attempt to get you to care more about the characters or something, but it feels really out of place.
Yeah. That fucking pocket is still covering the badge. He's got the other one buttoned. Which makes it makes it worse. I think you're right. I think it has to be a clip-on. That's why he can't button it and just pin it.
Yeah, you remember when we were kids and you stop in at KB Toys, and up near the counter they always had because all the good toys were in the back. They made you walk past all the crap toys to get to the good toys because they wanted the kids to see the crap toys first, just in case. Just in case you'd see them and you could set and they could.
Well, they had some of the really good toys by the front window because it was the window display.
Yeah, but you weren't allowed to take them out of the window, right?
No.
You had to walk all the way through the store into the back. All the G.I. Joes were in the back.
Yeah.
He-Man was all in the back.
He-Man was in the back.
But right up near the front counter was all those sets of like the Cowboys and Indians and the Cops and Robbers little kits, and it's all the really just cheap plastic, like they're in the vacuum formed, it was like you were carrying a briefcase out of there.
Yeah.
With all the crap in it. And they'd have for the sheriff ones, it would be like a little crappy plastic gun belt with the little plastic bullets stuck in it.
Yeah.
That would cut you because they all had sharp, hard edges. And there'd be a little star.
Little star.
In there. Yep. And it was always, because it's for little kids, so you can't have a pin on it.
You could go into Park Avenue Market and get a police kit with the star and the gun and the belt and the handcuffs and all that stuff. That's where they got this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what it is. It's out of one of those kits, and it's got a little plastic clip on the back that just you're supposed to clip it on a pocket or clip it on half the time you didn't have it. So you you always saw the kids with the t-shirts and it's clipped onto the collar of the t-shirt.
Yeah.
it's all up in here. Yeah. Stop in the name of the law.
Yeah.
That's Sheriff Jeff.
Yep, that's Sheriff Jeff.
But I love how the whole thing is set up. This whole movie is set up based around the idea. And I got to admit, for its time period, it almost feels a little bit like Goonies or like it's like here's these teenagers and with the power of hot. It's actually this is Fast and the Furious with a Gila monster.
It is Fast and the Furious.
Fast and the Furious Gila Monster Edition. I don't know. I'm sure we could come up with better titles. But this is like if you took if you took Vin Diesel.
You don't have a Vin Diesel impression?
Don't
do it if you don't have it. Don't do it if you don't have it.
The only way to stop a Gila monster is family. That's about as good as I get. The only thing stronger than family is family.
Sure.
I'm gonna jump the Gila monster. But yeah, so it's basically Fast and the Furious where they fight a Gila monster because these kids are going to use the power of hot rods,
right,
to defeat this giant nuclear Gila monster. And there's some great scenes here. There's the great scene that we're seeing right now is where the giant Gila monster derails a train. It takes out a train bridge and derails the train. And then it attacks. Eventually, they have the little sock hop in a barn. They have a barn dance, basically, and it attacks the barn.
So I got to ask you, because this is a double feature, so we're gonna have to get into Earth versus the Spider here in a second.
Right. So we're gonna jump to the end. So how do they finally kill this Gila monster?
So he drives the car into the Gila monster and it blows up.
Well, but it's got what in it? He gets what?
Was it gasoline?
Nitroglycerin.
Nitroglycerin, that's right. Yeah.
He's got the classic Box O nitroglycerin.
Right, that's right. And he
it's
drives
vials packed.
Right. So
and yet he drives a souped up hot rod with a box of nitro in the passenger seat next to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he aims it, Fast and Furious style, he aims it at the Gila monster and then dives for cover.
Right.
He jumps out and it hits the Gila monster. The nitro goes off, kablooey, and it's Gila monster chunks everywhere. Tremors style. And Brad, what do you think before we move on to Earth versus the Spider?
Yeah.
What do you think of this film?
I think it's exactly kind of what we said it is. It's just a fun little kid-friendly monster movie. I personally don't like having the live animal, just footage of the live animal walking around. Like I said that at the beginning. I'd rather them have tried to make like a lizard monster, by hand.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a fun little movie. It's just it's 73 minutes. It's very short. But it's a fun kind of introductory movie for kids into horror. This is a good route to take if you're trying to get your kids into horror movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very safe viewing.
Yep, very safe
for all ages, and they're pretty easy to find because, like I said, I'm pretty sure these because of copyright laws the way they were at the time, these movies are not under copyright protection. They're in public domain, so that's why you're seeing a lot of streaming channels carry them, and it really,
you can get these on Shudder, you can get these on Prime, you can get these on Tubi, you can get these on the Roku channel. They're everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're so fun to watch. They're such a good time, and Giant Gila Monster is one of the classics when it comes to these atomic monster films. So now we're gonna take a little intermission.
Intermission time. Time that stretch you've been wanting. And best of all, Time to take your pick from that scrumptious array of tasty treats waiting for you at the snack bar, where the popcorn's poppin', the cold drinks are sparkling, the hot dogs are sling, the coffee is steaming, and a luscious treasure of confectionery delights with ice cream and candy and so much more to tempt any taste is waiting for you now at the snack bar. You'll be notified in plenty of time when the next show is about to begin.
In 1947, the Byrd expedition to the South Pole reported a warm water oasis deep inside the icy Antarctic. This is the story of another expedition and of what might be found, what might happen today in that remote, unexplored last frontier on Earth. Unchanged since prehistoric times, the land unknown. Could man have survived in the dinosaur age of mighty monsters? Shudder at history's most ferocious killer, Tyrannosaurus Rex. The battle of the great Stegosauri. Huge carnivorous man-eating plants. The incredible water monster, Elasmosaurus.
We'll never get out of here, Alan. Never, never, never.
Stop it, do you hear me? Stop it. This doesn't sound like you. We're not lit yet. That's how I rule them. Where's the wreck? Talk. You're gonna rot here.
All right, and we're back from intermission, and hope you enjoyed the intermission and enjoyed the trailer for a wonderful film, monster film. And we're going to now talk about Earth versus the Spider.
Yep, that's right. And play.
That's right. So as we mentioned in the first half, during Giant Gila Monster, Earth versus the Spider, another now. I consider it an atomic monster film, even though they don't specifically identify what caused the spider to grow to gargantuan size.
But what is the opening of the movie?
The opening of the movie?
It's the spider web, and it's a glowing spider. The spider is glowing in and out, and
it's
and
flickering,
out, like it's radioactive. So it's they don't. I don't think they say it, but it's implied.
I think it's implied.
Yes,
I think it's implied.
I think so. I think it's implied.
So, produced, directed, and with special effects, special technical effects by Burt I. Gordon. As we mentioned, Burt I. Gordon kind of became known for this type of film, and as time went on, his special effects techniques tended to get cheaper and cheaper. But he is behind such movies as The Cyclops. We talked about The Amazing Colossal Man, War of the Colossal Beast, Beginning of the End. Also, Village of the Giants, which, if you have not seen Village of the Giants, it is not a great film, but it's an interesting film for its time period because it stars a young Beau Bridges, and it is about... In this case, Village of the Giants is not an atomic film. Village of the Giants is a more like a chemical film. A young child, Ron Howard, is in it, and little Ron Howard, little
Opie Cunningham,
little Opie Cunningham is a boy genius in the film and produces a special chemical that makes things grow to gargantuan size. And they start out thinking this is going to be some they want to sell it. This is going to be some big benefit because they think that, oh, if we could like grow like certain animals larger, like chickens, imagine all of the people you could feed with a gargantuan chicken or a gargantuan chicken egg, right? So that's how they're looking at it. They want to sell this to some big corporation. And I feel like it's not quite really explained how Beau Bridges and his little crew of ne'er-do-wells that he leads, like, happen upon this town.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're starting to see by the time they get to Village of the Giants, it's the creeping in of the we need to fear the teens type thing. Teens are dangerous. And so they're just like a crew of teens who I guess have bad intentions, but really the only thing that you know to start is they want to steal the chemical
mm-hmm.
and take it for themselves and become rich and everything else. And they're really tired of adults pushing them around. That's another weird thing. And so they accidentally, something happens where they get like the chemical. I don't know if they imbibe it or I forget what happens, but so they grow. And so Beau Bridges and his little crew of ne'er-do-wells grow to gargantuan size, and they start to like lord it over the town that, they're giants. And there's really bad special effects. For some reason, Bert I. Gordon in that one thinks that when you get gargantuan, you must move in slow motion. There's a whole dance scene where they dance to like cool music of the time period, and they're like doing all the jerky movements that they did back then, but it's all in slow motion. So it's a lot of Beau Bridges and like, because they had to like put on curtains and shit or something, and he's like Beau Bridges in a tunic, like doing this shit.
The hell?
And at one point, one of the girls picks a regular sized guy up and tucks him into like, it's risque out of nowhere. She tucks him into like her brassiere. It's weird. Anyway, that's Bert I. Gordon.
Okay.
So Earth versus the
Spider, however.
Correct. AKA The Spider. It was released as a double feature. So that's one of the things that sort of in line with our theme of drive-in double features, Atomic Monsters. It was released as a double feature, and depending on the market where you lived, because that was back when they had these markets, that they only released certain things in certain places. It was either released as a double feature with a movie called The Brain Eaters or with The Screaming Skull. So you got a pretty bang up little cast here. You got Ed Kemmer as Mr. Kingman. He's like one of the teachers, and he got his start in Alfred Hitchcock Presents. You got June Kenny as Carol Flynn. She worked in a ton of Roger Corman films. Teenage Doll, Sorority Girl. It was a lot of like Don Sullivan was in a movie called from Gila Monster, was in a movie called The Rebel Set. Again, the dangerous teenager type storyline. It was when, adults were supposed to fear teens or something. Teens were going to like ruin everything and take over the world. She was also in, and this is the longest horror movie title. I have to mention it because it's the longest horror movie title I've ever seen. The Saga of the Viking Women and Their Voyage to the Waters of the Great Sea Serpent. That was a Roger Corman film starring June Kenny. Then you got Eugene Person as Mike Simpson. You heard that right, Eugene Person. Oddly enough, Eugene Person was actually the co-producer and co-creator of the stage musical "You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown." You got Gene Roth as Sheriff Cagle. There's always a sheriff in these movies, and it's always this old crusty sheriff.
Well,
and of course,
well, wait a minute. I don't know that it's fair to call Sheriff Jeff old and crusty. I mean, he was older, but was he crusty? He was on the main character's side. You know what I mean?
He did have dad bod.
He was very surprised.
he had grandpa, but he had a full mustache, very virile.
Yeah.
And of course, honorable mention goes to Brad, your favorite, the character of Joe, played by Troy Patterson. Tell us about Joe, Brad.
Joe? Which one's Joe?
Joe is the one that looks like he should be one of their fathers.
Oh, Joe. the 50-year-old.
Yeah, he was 35 when they made this film.
Oh my goodness. Now, I get it. It's a common thing for older actors to play younger teenagers, right?
90210.
902, right. Yeah.
This was the 90210 of 1950s atomic monster films.
Right. Well, again, the giant Gila monster, he was 30. So
right.
Don Sullivan.
Yeah. Joe's got him beat. Troy
so
Patterson
Joe's
has
got him beat. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He looks even old. Why it's we've talked about it before. Why is it people this is going to come out wrong if there's any older listeners. I'm so sorry. People in older movies look older than their age.
Joe looks like he has multiple children with multiple women.
Because I would have gone to 50 years old for old Joe.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell Joe likes his whiskey and enjoys a good cigarette.
Well, yeah, okay. But do you know what I mean? Is that not a thing? Is that not a thing that people like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm not crazy.
Yeah, and actually, oddly enough, I mean, to give you an idea of how hard. And no judgments on Troy Patterson himself, because watching him in this movie is enjoyable just for, that he looks how old he is. But he's 35 in this and looks 50. Troy Patterson passed when he was 52. I mean, he must have been living a bit of a life, and I think that's probably how he, got to look as old as he does in this film.
Well, that's speculation, Kyle.
It's speculation, but I mean, when you pass it, when you're 35 and look the way he does in this film, and then you pass at 52, usually that's because your health is not being kept up on. You know what I mean?
Sure.
No judgment, but he looks like he's had a hard life.
Yeah. Maybe he did. Maybe he did have a hard life. I don't know. How do you know? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know, Joe. So, Brad, tell us about what kicks off the whole. Now they say Earth versus the Spider. Do you feel that title is accurate?
We've talked about this, yeah.
At all?
No, because so the title Earth versus the Spider, it feels like there's going to be this coordinated, globally coordinated defense against this giant evil monster spider. And there's none of that. It's just it's not even the whole town. It's just some people from the town. Some of the other people in the town are just but some people from the town are going after this giant spider. But it's Earth versus the spider. So that's why I think maybe at some point, and I don't know why, what the story is, if you have any notes on it or whatever, why it's also known as Just the Spider. I think maybe Just the Spider is a better title for this movie rather than Earth versus the Spider, because there's no global cooperation
Right.
or anything.
Later on in its distribution, when it got released, you know, in second, third runs, you know, in different markets around the country, they did change it to the Spider, because I do think that it was a little. I think people did feel shortchanged when they when they saw it.
It's just like it's the whole movie centers around like 6 people.
Right. So you do expect that there's going if you walked into Earth versus the Spider, you probably would anticipate there would be some moment where a bunch of tanks and jeeps and other army vehicles roll in. Somebody
Right.
gets out and says, "Are you where's Eugene?
Right.
We're the army guys."
There are monsters. Please come.
Yeah, we got your message.
We got your note. All right.
But
which one of you is Eugene?
But that does not happen at all.
Nope.
The best you get is a bunch of hard-nosed pest control technicians. The pest control technicians.
Oh my God.
Brad,
so okay. All
save
right.
the
So
day.
listen, they do. That's true. They do. But they're spraying, I think they say it's DDT.
Yeah. Well, let's set the stage. So a girl's dad has gone missing. She and her boyfriend, who the boyfriend seems not quite plugged in. It does not feel like this relationship is going to progress through like past high school.
Right. No, as soon as she graduates, he's history.
Yeah, you get the feeling that Mike has got like probably 1 foot out the door. He's probably already thinking of girls he's going to meet when he gets to whatever college or university he plans to attend. So he kind of reluctantly goes along with, she wants to search for her dad. They get to the area, this area along this road that she knows he would have traveled, and they see some skid marks or something, and there's spider strands of like things across the road.
Yeah.
It's very weird. And they go down into this ditch. They find his truck. It's all busted up. There's blood. Like we said, there's blood that's splattered. And then they follow what seems to be like a trail to a cave, like an old mining cave, right? And they go in the cave and they find a giant spider web.
It's like a cargo net.
I was about to say that it's the most technically recreated spider web I think that's ever been captured
and
on
it's just
film.
like it's
a net. It's a net.
It's just a net. Yep.
It doesn't. I don't even think it radiates out from the middle, does it?
No.
There's no central hub.
No. It's just straight across. It's just a grid. Straight across. That's all it is. It's just a net.
So they happen upon it by accident, and they get really freaked out. They hear noises, and they're really freaked out, and they see something that scares them, and they run out and they go to tell the authorities. And of course, it's kids and authorities. Authorities don't care. So
now this sheriff is crusty and old and like this is like your typical horror movie sheriff,
right?
Yeah.
The only person who seems to care and seems to listen is their science teacher.
Right.
That's who they go. Because in the 50s, Brad, if you discovered a giant creature of any kind, what would you do?
I'd go to my science teacher.
That's right.
That's right.
And so he's the only one who initially believes them. The sheriff thinks this is a joke. These kids are rolling some Doobie Wacky Weeds, and
Doobie Wacky Weeds. What the fuck?
they're all hopped up on the shrubbery.
Reefer.
He thinks it's all a joke.
Yep. There he is. Springdale Pest Control.
Yeah, so
with his giant tank. Now listen. This is like, it's movies like this that, like, pest control was something very different in the 50s for sure. They got away with a lot of stuff. But people still have that image in their mind of, like, that's what it still is. And it's much, much different.
Right. So
no one's pulling up with a big giant tank full of pesticide.
The sheriff calls in 3 working stiffs, right? One guy is attached to the mine that used to operate in that, like, there's a mining company that used to operate in that cave. And so he's like the mining guy. He's got his hard hat on. And then there's 2 pest control technicians who bring in the big tanker truck with a crazy amount of hose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like this hose. It's
like a
goes on
500 foot. Yeah, it's huge.
And they all go marching in. The sheriff, the deputies, the science teacher, the 2 kids, the mining guy, the pest control. Like it's like a little happy little fun bunch going into this cave, and they're gonna show them where they saw this giant spider web. And hopefully she's hoping to find her father, the main character. What's her name again? Her name is Carol. Mike and Carol. Carol's hoping to find her dad, still alive in this cave. But Brad, I mean, we know, is her dad alive or dead?
He dead.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're the first person in a film to get got by the giant spider,
he got. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're dead.
Yeah.
And not only do they find out he's dead, they find out he has been sucked dry. So Brad, you're gonna talk about the magic potion that these pest control technicians are going to use.
I think it's DDT.
It is. It's a tanker full of it.
It's a tanker full of DDT, which is was a common pesticide used in the 40s and the 50s, and is no longer in use in the United States. It was used
right up till the 70s, wasn't it?
It was banned in 1972, a couple of years after the EPA formed. One of their first things they did was ban DDT. But it's still used in other parts of the world to fight malaria because it's effective.
Yeah, it's one of the few. It's my understanding, just from the little bit that I read up. It's like one of the few things that like absolutely knocks mosquitoes out.
Yeah, it's pretty effective. Can be resistance. There can be DDT resistance, but anyway, but it's certainly not in use in the United States anymore. It's just funny to me that he just pulls up with a tanker truck full of DDT and a fire hose. He's just gonna blast it, and again, 1950s pest control.
Well, and
there might be some truth. All I'm saying is there might be some truth to it.
So now, as far as pest control technicians go, in horror movies, and specifically in spider-oriented horror movies, who do you root for? Do you root for these guys or John Goodman's character?
John Goodman! Oh, come on, man, that was me. I told you did I ever tell you that story? I had a spider encounter. I was servicing an outdoor theater in New Jersey. And they had a stage, and they had the sound booth, and they had the snack booth. And so I'm going in there and I'm treating all those booths, and there's a wolf spider that was right in front of me. And so I sprayed it, and it just kind of curled up, and then it uncurled its legs and kept moving towards me. And then I sprayed it again and it curled up again and it started moving towards me and I freaked out. So I just stepped on it like John Goodman did in the movie. However, that was very early in my career. Since then, I try to teach, I certainly try to teach Mina that spiders are good and we shouldn't be killing spiders. So the fact that they're, now this is a giant spider, so I guess you have to take care of that. But for the most part, you don't want to kill spiders.
Yeah. And so the funny part is, so Brad, like if you were taking on a giant spider like this,
definitely have a fire hose and a tank full of DDT for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't just like throw like a bunch of diatomaceous earth at it or
diatomaceous earth. Oh my god! I'll just wait that out. It bites my fucking head off. Nah, diatoms.
Like, yeah, you're the bug wizard. Yeah. Just throw
diatoms.
And so they put the poor pest control technicians in the most. I understand it's the 50s, but they look like the most ineffective gas masks you've ever seen. And these guys have to climb down into the web for some reason.
Yeah. I don't know why they climbed down into the web. That didn't make much sense to me.
And so they initially just start spraying willy-nilly, and then finally they see it and start trying to spray the actual spider, which again is a
tarantula. What? A tarantula?
Tarantula.
Okay.
Yes. Which tarantulas are like, the funny part is it's movies like this that like vilified tarantulas, right? Because, my understanding, they're like some of the most docile spiders there are. Like a tarantula really doesn't.
Well, most things when they encounter people their first line of defense is to run away. Especially even spiders and stuff. There's some spiders that are more aggressive, but no, I think tarantulas will pretty much leave you alone, and they're after other things. They're not after people. So
well, and that's also why they're kept as pets. There's even people now that keep wolf spiders as pets, like some of the larger species of wolf spiders.
Yeah.
There's people that keep them as pets. But yeah, so these are not they're not vicious. Obviously, you got your black widows, your brown recluses, there's other way more dangerous spiders.
Sure.
But obviously, you get it. Like when you're making a horror film in the 1950s,
tarantulas are scary looking.
They're scary looking. They're big, so they film well.
Yeah.
And they're also, because they're so docile, they're easy to work with. You lay the tarantula down, let it do its thing. You can pick it right back up, put it back in its little box, go to the next shot.
And they get, you've seen the ones in the Amazon, the Goliath spiders, the Goliath tarantulas that are the size of like dinner plates.
Yeah. And so, but it's like there was movies like this that created that whole stigma where everybody automatically thought a tarantula was like the worst possible, most aggressive spider you could come across.
Right. And which translates then to all spiders.
Right.
Because even people want you to, like, I won't throw her under the bus, but my ex wants me to kill a spider in her house. And it's just a little house spider. I'm like, leave the house spider alone. It's just eating insects. It's not going to harm you. It's not going to bite you.
Well, yeah. That's like, sometimes we barely use our basement. Our basement is not a like functional, livable basement. It's literally just to store things and keep like the furnace and all that. And you go down there and it is just, we get every year wall to wall, the daddy long legs or whatever the other species is that you call daddy long legs, but it really isn't.
Harvestman.
And yeah, and it's just full of them. And anytime I got to send one of the boys down there to just help out with anything, it's all these spiders, and why don't you come down here and spray something? Why don't you clear? I said, hey, do you see any termites? Do you see any? I said, when you're down there, did you see anything else? No, you didn't, because it's full of spiders and they're killing everything.
Yeah, that's right.
So I leave them be. The only time I get weird about is if they're in my bed or they're on the toilet. I don't like.
Why? Because you have a fear. Because don't lie, you have a fear that the spider's going to bite you on the balls while you're on the toilet.
Right on the nutsack.
Right on the nutsack. That's not a legitimate fear, Kyle.
So in the 1950s, though,
anyway,
when they see a giant tarantula, though,
yeah,
they're scared shitless, and they spray the living heck out of this thing with the DDT, and it basically rolls over.
Yep, curls up
on its back, curls up, and they believe it's dead. But Brad, is it dead?
Of course not, Kyle. Of course
not. Just like so many before, just like the Terminator, just like
it's like the Terminator. Yeah.
Yeah. You think it's dead and then it comes back.
That's right.
But they make the I mean, obviously, like when it comes to like you might know this better than I would. Like, you can't test a giant spider for a heartbeat, can you? Like, if you put a stethoscope to a spider's exoskeleton, you're not going to hear.
Oh,
you're not going to hear a boom, 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 right?
No.
And they don't breathe like we do. They don't have little lungs that respirate. So they just assume that because this thing keeled over and curled up, they just assume it's dead.
Right.
And where if you have like a giant dangerous creature that you have not found an effective way to establish whether it's alive or dead,
put it on display for people to take pictures. Visit.
Take it on down to the school gymnasium.
Yep. let the kiddies see.
Right. So yeah, they put the thing on display, and nobody seems to. They have a scene here where Carol and her mom talk about the fact that her dad's dead, but nobody else seems to really care that Carol's dad's dead.
Right.
He doesn't really get mentioned again. They find like his desiccated body down there. Like she sees the most horrific possible thing imaginable. She sees the desiccated, mummified corpse of her father.
Yeah.
In this cave.
Yep.
That's with a giant spider. And Mike's like, I mean, honey, come on. Like, how long are we going to keep going on about this? And there's a poster. He sneaks in a poster for The Amazing Colossal Man. At the local movie theater has The Amazing Colossal Man showing. So there you go. Burt I. Gordon plugging his own other atomic monster movie.
Nice.
So they get this whole thing going when the spider comes back to life.
Huh? And it starts to get rolling again.
And now they've brought it down into the middle of town. Because it's inside the school, it's inside the gymnasium. So there's only, one thing that can happen. It terrorizes the hell out of this town.
You know what I was thinking too is the whole time though, like, so when tarantulas get scared, they fling their butt hairs. And
that's right. You actually see a bald ass tarantula at one point in this movie.
You would think that, one of the cool, because it's just footage of a spider walking, it's, but if the tarantula would have flung its butt hairs, one of those hairs would have been like a giant,
like a spear.
Yeah, been like a spear.
Yeah, it would have been great. Yeah, if Burt I. Gordon had spent any time whatsoever researching tarantulas,
right?
He there could have been other really cool shots in the movie of it, because they use their back legs to basically brush the hairs off.
Yeah, and
in the direction of their enemy.
Yeah.
And so the hairs are real. They're basically like a tarantula's bristle hairs are akin to a porcupine quill. They're that sharp, and then really it's for things trying to eat the tarantula. So it gets in their mouth, and then basically they have all these like itchy, stingy little needles in their mouth. And that would have been so cool to see it brush one of these hairs off and like stab Joe through the heart.
Right. Oh, poor Joe. Come on, man.
Joe looks like.
But Joe is in good. Okay, so here's the weird thing. But Joe looks like a really in shape 50-year-old, but he's 35.
Joe looks like he does the Jacqueline Lane workout. I'm not knocking Joe for, how. But,
and he's got his sleeves rolled up.
Right. Yeah, he's a tough guy. Although they're
but there's no pack of cigarettes in there.
No, there isn't. But I mean,
is there any smoking in this movie?
I'm not sure that there is actually, which is odd for a 50s film.
Yeah,
Joe
it was good for you in the 50s.
Joe looks like he probably smokes about 3 packs a day.
Right, non-filtered.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he looks like he looks like he owes alimony somewhere. well, he looks like he's hiding out. He looks like he moved to this town, and he bought a house.
Hey, fellow kids, yeah.
He bought a house, but he says that it's like his dad's house, but it's really bought under his real name.
Right.
And then he goes and enrolls himself in school as Joe.
Right.
And this is where he's hiding from the ex-wife so he doesn't have to pay her for the kid.
Yeah.
He probably ditched his car at a quarry and let it blow up, and like people back in his real hometown think he's dead.
Yeah.
But meanwhile,
Joe, what's your last name? I'm Joey McNamara.
But meanwhile, Joe is the conductor of this little like rock band that they have, or jazzy band. I don't know what they're supposed to be, but. And the one guy, can we mention the one guy wearing the peasant shirt? I'm not sure what part of at what point in the 50s, if there was like a period. I would love if somebody, nosferadudes@gmail.com, if you could tell me if you know anything about a strange like peasant garb period of the 50s where it was really like hip and cool to wear like a peasant shirt. And I don't know, maybe it's always been cool. But it's kind of like you see all these classic kind of like the 50s, the clean cut mod look of the 50s.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy wearing a shirt that has like a lace up peasant collar, and it's really noticeable because he's the only person dressed that way.
It's not a jersey of some kind, is it?
No, it's literally a stringed collar, like instead of having buttons, he's got laces.
It's kind of hot though.
Yeah, I mean, hey, peasant garb. I mean, hey, D&D is the thing now.
Looks good.
Viking chic is the thing.
Well, I'm not saying I'm into like Viking shit or anything. I'm just saying that it looks hot on him. That's all.
But so, of course, they're having their little rehearsal and an impromptu sock hop. Again, another sock hop. A little impromptu dance.
Did they dance better in the 40s and the 50s? Did our grandparents dance better than we do?
It depends. It really depends, I think. Some of it's regional. There's certain dances that they did in certain parts of not only our country but other countries that when you watch them they look really, really kind of odd, and they were from that time period. Like there's a whole thing now I keep seeing on Instagram, all these like British kids doing this weird throwback dance that was like big in the 40s, 50s in England. and it doesn't. It's weird to me. It's just them almost. Just
Yeah, but
kind
I
of
mean, like, there's people on TikTok and stuff
spinning.
like that doing dances, and there's professional dancers out there. But what I'm saying is, a high school dance in 1948 or 1957 looked a lot different than a high school dance did in 1987 or 1997.
Yeah, true. Now, I got to preface this. This is coming from a fat guy. But
you dance pretty. I mean, you're a good dancer.
Well, coming from where I'm coming from, where my feeling is that dancing of
My feeling about dancing by Kyle M. Thatcher.
and now tonight, Kyle's take on dance. I think that dancing in the 40s and the 50s and even the 60s, before it got like really weird with all the jerky stuff, came off more as like dancing for fun. Like, we're just going to go out and have a good time and have like a fun dance. Dancing today looks like fucking work. Like, when you watch those Instagrams and TikToks and shit.
But they had these big coordinated dances in the 40s and the 50s. They're like throwing each other between their legs and fucking all over the place and twisting around and kicking their legs out, and
that's the stuff that you see in movies. I
don't know. I don't know about that. I think more of our grandparents knew how to dance than like people like guys in our generation.
I think a lot of the most popular dances had like a series of fairly simple steps that, when put together, looked really complicated. But again, they were like organized in patterns of steps because the whole idea was to get out on the dance floor with the guy or girl that you liked and to have a good time, have fun. But if you watch like, I don't know if anybody's ever had the experience of, you're out at a bar and there's music playing. It's like, it's a dance night. They're going to have a DJ or something. And their little dance floor forms. And then you get that like one person that like probably studied dance in some capacity, and they get out there and they start doing kind of what is like the classically accepted like dance class style of hip hop, and they look like they're putting in a lot of effort and they're not getting a lot in return, because it's at that point that number one, everybody has to like move away because you're flinging your arms and legs everywhere.
Yeah.
And who's going to dance with you? Who's going to keep up with you? You're out there by yourself. It seems like some of that stuff is like it's performative. It's performative. It's like, look at me. I know how to dance. I know how to dance. That's hip hop. I know how to dance hip hop really well. See, hip hop's like, you got to hold your arms like this. That's hip hop. It's a little bit performative. It's a little bit, hey, look at me. Whereas dancing of this kind of organized dancing of this time period was more like, let's just go out and let's have a good time. It's all of us together on the dance floor. We're all kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just to have fun. It's just to have a good time and dance with somebody that you like. That's my feeling on it. That's, what do I know?
Oh my
What
goodness.
do I know?
It's performative.
It's performative.
There he goes. The tarantula just went by with no butt hairs. He was bald.
Yeah, bare-assed. That's one. There's one bare-assed tarantula. And also I got to mention before we're all done with this. Oh, for some reason I'm not getting power. Why am I not getting power all of a sudden? Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. Something is amiss.
Uh-oh.
Something came unplugged. That's why. Okay. That's odd. But I think we have it fixed.
Awesome.
Can everybody hear me? Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's charging. That was weird. I went this whole time and all of a sudden I got like a battery alert. There's even a part in this where it kills a fucking kid. Like, it kills a little kid.
Yeah.
Like in this, it just like here it's coming right up. This little, like, Bird Eye Gordon. Okay. Bird Eye Gordon cuts some massive corners places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of an up and down to quality, through his many films. But you got to admit, when it comes to him showing a bloody little, like the spider is very obviously destroying the neighborhood, like destroying Main Street, destroying the neighborhoods.
Yep.
And he shows a bloody little kid like out in the street crying for its mom.
Yep.
And it is just like he will in some instances just go there.
Yeah, it's somewhat out of place, isn't it? Because most of the movie is more PG, and then that's I mean, it's not like it's super graphic, but it's very disturbing.
Yeah. It's sort of like he really did make the film to, even though it has to fit a certain kind of quote unquote cookie cutter Hays Code style of filmmaking of that era, where certain things have to have the corners a little rounded, and you have to buff out the violence just a little bit, things like that. He sneaks in these things that would, like, you see him and you're like, holy shit, like he's actively trying to scare the shit out of you. He really is. Like, even though he's maybe not bringing it across all the time, he's trying. You can at least tell Bird Eye Gordon's trying to scare you, right? The giant, it's like, let's compare it to Giant Gila Monster. More things are falling. Let's compare it to Giant Gila Monster. Giant Gila Monster, it's like there's, like, yes, it's meant to be a scary horror movie, but it feels very, very clean.
It is very clean. Yeah.
Deaths for the most part are very implied.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
In this one, Bird Eye Gordon is like bringing it home, like, people are dying. There are deaths, there is blood, there is horror, there is terror. Like, be afraid. So I got to give him that.
There's a little bit more tension, too, in the chase when the spider is kind of chasing what's his face down and in the car and everything.
Yeah,
so there's
Mr. Kimmerman.
Yeah.
Kemmer, Mr. Kemmer. Or wait, no, Ed Kemmer playing Mr. Kingman. I completely combined the two. Kemmerman. Mr. Kemmerman. So, Brad, we're coming to the end here of the drive-in double feature. Now this film ends with them electrocuting this thing. They get a hold of some very powerful electrodes, and they run some wires.
They do
into the cave.
Yes.
They run them into the cave.
Mm-hmm.
Mike and Carol are trapped and almost dying, and the spider's crawling to get them. And somehow they get these electrodes on either side, and they electrocute the spider, and it falls and it gets impaled on, quick pop quiz, stalagmite or stalactite?
Stalactite.
No.
Oh, come on.
Stalactites hang tight to the ceiling. Stalagmites might reach the ceiling one day.
Is that
Come on, Brad.
That's the same from Lost River Caverns.
You know what, dude? That's fucking basics, man. Oh my god, you just ruined it.
I can never get those things straight.
So, so to round it off, they electrify it. It's dead. Everybody's safe. Although they collapse the cave because who knows? You never know. Spiders have lots of babies. There could be other giant spiders. But to round it off, I had a couple of questions I thought of I wanted to ask you. To end the episode. First of all, what's your personal favorite atomic monster / kaiju movie?
Godzilla. Godzilla minus one.
Oh, you know what? I still have to watch that. I'm so behind on that. I still have to watch it.
It is amazing. It's really, really good. I'm sorry, it's really good.
And I would have to say, to be honest, I don't know that I specifically have, because given King Kong isn't an atomic monster specifically.
No.
But if I had to pick a giant monster film, probably King Kong would be like my go-to. As far as atomic monsters go, I actually really kind of enjoy, even though it has its, cheapness, in some aspects, I really enjoy Earth versus the Spider. I really get a kick out of this movie. I've watched it multiple times.
Yeah.
What do you think is a better outcome for an atomic monster? Giantism, shrinkage, or mutation?
Giantism.
Yeah, they think that's the best outcome if you get it like irradiated.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to be giant. Are you kidding me?
And you answered my last question about like any monster movies today stacking up to the atomic monster movies of the 50s. You would say Godzilla -1 would be.
Godzilla -1 is amazing, and there's a couple ways you can watch it. You can watch it with the subtitles. You can watch it in black and white. You can watch it in black and white with the subtitles. So either way, though, it was really pretty deep. It's like a story within a story. So yeah, there's a lot of layers to that movie. So I hope one day we can cover it in an episode. It'd be fun.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for a monster film. I'm a sucker for.
I like monster movies.
Like
I do. I like all the the Godzilla and the King Kong movies that they've been coming out with. Godzilla -1 was separate from that. That was a Japanese production, and they just nailed it. But I like all the monster movies in general. They're just not. I never think of them as scary. I think of them more as fun movies, right? I'm not scared of God. I'm not scared of Godzilla. I want to see Godzilla. The more of Godzilla I see in a movie, the better.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of the it's some of the kind of not so much. I never get like the eras of art down, but like not so much a postmodern attitude, but whatever comes after postmodern. In that, like the threat of atomic destruction is still there. It's still out there. But it's sort of like after some of the stuff that we've seen, with things like 9/11 and things like that, you have, there's other forms of destruction that are just as scary. And I think there's also, I feel like there's kind of a realization or some kind of latent understanding within culture and society about like, well, okay, yes, obviously nuclear weapons are scary. Obviously they're a threat, but like, what would you even do about that? Like if it were to happen, what would you even do? And so there's a
crawl
little
under
bit of
your
a
desk.
Right. Yeah. Take duck and cover. There's a little bit of a like, well, if there's nothing I could even do about it, how can I get like super scared of it? And so the atomic monster thing eventually like wore itself out. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for, obviously you can still translate that to other Cloverfield. Cloverfield is very much felt like with the fact that it happens in New York and then like the 9/11 thing, it feels like it has that depth to it. It has that, oh my God, something is like literally destroying and changing our way of life kind of thing. So there's still a realm of use for giant monster films. I'm not sure, I think it takes a special writer, director to like figure out how do I make it relevant and not just a spectacle, But anyway, we love them. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening and possibly watching our Atomic Monster Drive-In double feature. It's first of its kind. We want to start doing more video, and we may be doing more eventually another double feature of some kind coming in the future. But we kind of are testing out this new way of doing things, and we appreciate you joining us. So on that note, from me
and me,
thank you so much for listening, and remember, the broadcast is coming from inside the house.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.